Hi everyone, welcome to my channel again. Today we are drawing this beautiful fabric with the folds. I'm going to give you all the tips and techniques about how I did that, step by step, in a second. If you want all my real-time, fully narrated tutorials, you know the address, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. Come on, we are drawing folds. Analyzing our object is the first step. We need to look at the folds and also the silk fabric as a whole. Where do we see the shadows? This is the first question that we need to ask. We need to identify those areas with darkest shadows first. These are some of them so that you can understand what I'm talking about, but there is more. The next step is to identify all the highlights, the brightest parts. Once we know these areas, by blending them, we will get the midtones already. Now have a look at our reference photo one last time and try to see all the highlights and all the shadows without me showing them to you. There are also some tricky parts in this drawing to consider before you start drawing. These blue arrows, for example, show really thin lines of midtone, dark shadow, then bright highlights, sharp transitions. Then there are these two bird-looking structures on the right. Although they look similar, the upper one needs to be darker than the lower one. We need to identify these differences and get ready before we start drawing. Here is another interesting structure that is shown with a green arrow here. This wavy line needs our special attention. A good sketch is your best helper. If you ask me, what I did here is basically where the shadows finish and where the shadows start, and also the same thing with highlights. So once I know these in my sketch, it's so easy for me to go in and shade. We start by shading the darkest shadows first. Remember the analysis in the beginning we did together? So that analysis was really helpful because now we know where to go and where to shade for the darkest of the shadows. The importance of putting the darkest ones first is basically that's our roadmap. Here I would like to draw your attention to how I hold my pencil. It's from the far back, and if I want more control, only in the middle, not towards the beginning of the pencil. The reason I'm holding it like that is because I don't want any harsh pencil strokes on my paper, because by shading like this I'm going to have more smooth transitions and I will be blending them much more easily. Another plus side is that I can erase them much more easily. We will use a variety of blending tools in this drawing. For larger areas, I will use a clean tissue. I roll it around my finger, and by applying just a little bit pressure, I blend all the graphite. Then, for smaller areas, as you see, I blend with a Q-tip. As the last step, always I blend everything with my tissue, because this brings everything together and all these isolated shadows join together to form a silky fabric. Giving the highlights is our next step. We use kneaded eraser for areas that are comparably larger, but if you want to give highlights in a more linear structure, in more linear shape, then I highly recommend using your eraser pencil, just like I'm using right now. Do you remember that interesting structure, the wavy structure that we were talking about in the beginning? Our eraser pencil helps us to create this shape. Don't forget to blend after you finish erasing, because otherwise it won't have the realistic effect that we are looking for in our drawing. So now we finished the first section, we are moving on to the second section. I kind of compartmentalized them in three parts. So what I'm doing here is again the same procedure. I'm adding the darkest shadows first, and then I'm going to add the highlights and I'm going to blend them, and then I'm going to move forward to the third section. One thing that I want to tell you here is what I'm doing also sometimes going from darkest to lightest application. By releasing the pressure on my pencil, I'm getting some kind of transitions in the places that they are not really dark. When it comes to blending, I want to show you that I am actually first using a Q-tip, and then once I lock them in with my Q-tip, I am going back with my tissue and I'm blending them all. So why am I doing that exactly? Because I want them to stay dark. And if I don't use Q-tip first and I just go in with my tissue right away, then I'm gonna lighten up all those dark places. I don't want that. I wanna lock those dark places in. By the way, instead of a Q-tip, of course, you can use a blending stump. It's gonna have a very similar effect. We are in the last section. Here is a little bit more complicated with all the swirls and curls, but as we do the second and third layer, they will finally look really nice and very realistic. After I finish the last section, I will blend everything with my tissue smoothly and nicely. As you can see, this is a cycle. You just add shades, add shadows with your darkest pencil, and then you go in and do the highlights and you blend, and then you do the same things again. After you erase, you have to blend again, and then you draw, and then you erase and you blend. So this cycle continues until you get a satisfactory result. A new round of highlights is necessary as the tissue filled in all the previously highlighted areas when I blended them. So here I want to show you how I use my kneaded eraser. I pull out a small section and then press it with my both fingers to get a sharp edge like this, and I erase, and then I erase in a line shape to give the highlight effect right here on the top of the fold. This will give the illusion that the highlighted area is the highest point of the fold, so reflects the light the most. After the highlights, we blended one more time, of course. As the next step, we will go in and shade the darkest part one more time. I use my B pencil again most of the time, as I said, but this time I'm holding my 4B pencil in my hand. I need darker layers this time. I'm drawing and blending as I go. I use my Q-tips for blending. This type of layer building process is really necessary to achieve a 3D effect in the end. So keep doing it, guys. It will be really wonderful in the end. It's going to worth all your efforts. So when you shade the darkest parts, if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, then you can try this technique. So get your charcoal pencil, apply heavily on a different piece of paper. Then get a watercolor brush. I usually use number 8 brush, but you can use whatever you want to. And then dip it in, but it has to be a flat brush, by the way, not round brush. Then you dip it in into the charcoal dust, and then go back in and go into those darkest areas. You will realize that it's gonna give this beautiful dark black and smooth effect. Because of the brush, the shadows will blend really softly without harsh lines. And also, because we had blended the graphite already, charcoal dust will have no difficulty in sticking on graphite layer. Highlights again, you know the drill, but this time we are interested in the brightest of the brightest. So we're just gonna make sure these are our last highlights, so we are just going to give the brightest places one more chance to shine. If you believe that some midtones are still missing, you can add them with your graphite pencil. I'm using my B pencil here. I'm working on some midtones here with my B, but then I also work on some thin shadows. Remember the beginning of this video, we talked about these thin layers of shadow? Here we go. We are adding them with our sharpened pencil now. This area is so thin that we cannot blend, so it is good to go in with our pencils to create these dark shadowed lines. After adding all these midtones, the very final step we have is adding the blackest shadows. So in order to add some more depth, we need to do that, and I decided to use my medium charcoal pencil here as it is the darkest one I have. Of course, don't forget to blend after you apply this charcoal, and boom, it looks great. I hope you find this video helpful, guys. If you want to watch more of my videos, please go ahead. And if you feel like supporting me today, you can hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Thanks for watching my video. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe. And for my real-time narrated tutorials, visit my Patreon, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. Stay with art and love.